It's hard to believe that it's been over a year since I made a video where I talked about some of the best games I beat in 2020. Since then, much of the stuff that we all thought was abnormal has continued to become the new normal, and as crazy as it might sound, it honestly doesn't feel like much has happened. Part of why I feel that way might be because of a 7 months long break I took in the back half of the year, but I think I'll save the oration on that for the end of the video. By popular demand, I've gone ahead and done the same thing for the following year. The best games I beat in the year thing, not the hiatus thing, though I'm sorry this took as long as it did. Once again, this isn't a list of the best games that came out in 2021, just the games that I happened to beat for the first time in 2021. Without further ado, let's get into it. I've already defended Mega Man and Bass at length in a separate video, so I won't linger too long on this one. However, maybe to some of you I didn't explain my case well enough. Yes, the game is challenging, but I think it's done in a way that isn't completely discouraging to the player. Playing Mega Man 9 earlier this year pretty much cemented this belief for me. If I didn't have the Legacy Collection's checkpoint save feature, I doubt I would have ever bothered to finish it. Meanwhile, I hardly need save states for Mega Man and Bass, but maybe you're right, maybe Mega Man and Bass's difficulty isn't that well handled in some spots. What else is worth defending in that case? Easy. The diverse, memorable, well-developed stages, the consistently useful and fun special weapons, the fact that bosses don't instantly break from those special weapons, the high replayability with 2 distinct characters and 100 CDs to find, the great shop and parts systems, the gorgeous visuals, and the pleasant music. I've also played and enjoyed plenty of other classic Mega Man games this year, but none of them hooked me the same way Mega Man and Bass did. Celeste is the worst game of all time because it gives you unlimited tries for the whole game. As the Mega Man and Bass detractors have made clear to me, if the player is allowed to retry a section endlessly, that's automatically an indication that the section was designed poorly. In all seriousness, Celeste is one of those games that I heard a lot of praise towards but didn't play until this year, and I'm glad I did because it's really good. It's mechanically a rather simple game about jumping, air dashing, and climbing walls with some pretty basic stage mechanics thrown in, but it gets a surprising amount of mileage out of that while maintaining tight pacing. I genuinely don't think I've played a platformer that feels so meticulously designed. There isn't a single object, in the main story stages at least, that feels out of place or annoying, and yet the challenge in the moment is incredibly steep. That's only talking about the main game though. I still haven't gone into a lot of the B-sides or other bonus levels that are supposedly even harder and give you even more to do. I probably should at some point. The high challenge, along with frequent checkpoints, accessibility options, and the aforementioned unlimited tries means that any competent player can get through the game, but it's still an engaging experience no matter how good you are. Even if you don't think you're good enough to overcome Celeste, don't shy away from it. It's kind of the message of the game now that I think about it. I have a bit of a weird history with the mainline Mario platformers. The 2D games from an objective standpoint don't have many flaws that I can readily point out, but I always have a hard time coming back to them because I find them so unforgiving. Meanwhile, games like Super Mario 64 and Sunshine are easier for me to get into, but the issues with them are more apparent to me. 64 suffers from first game syndrome and has trouble matching its controls with the level design at points, and Sunshine was clearly rushed with structural issues and some obnoxious missions. Enter Super Mario Galaxy, and I have a game in this series that I can happily call a favorite. What sticks out to me is just how much of a massive, epic experience it feels compared to nearly every other Mario game, spanning the whole universe in scope and supported by an intense orchestral score. The gameplay combines the best elements of the 2D and 3D games while forging its own identity through its planetary level design. Each galaxy manages to both feel like a straightforward obstacle course and a lived-in world. You're given some freedom to choose which missions to play to reach the final boss, and each mission feels like it does something completely different, be it through unique power-ups, stage layouts, or different goals like racing against the clock. Thankfully, the game rarely buckles under all of this weight. The stage mechanics are polished, the motion controls are well utilized, and Mario's control, while not quite as satisfying as Sunshine's in my opinion, is more than tight enough for the worlds he's given. My only issue is that the game is a little on the easy side, but maybe I'll change my mind on that if I try to go for 100%. Otherwise, it's Super Mario Galaxy, man. It's so good that they made another one that I still haven't finished. Next up is Portal 2. I have had a hard time thinking of how to begin this section, and I think that's because I don't have much background to talk about. I've never been much for first-person shooters, though I do remember playing the first Portal many years ago. Unlike other FPSs, it's more about puzzle solving using the unique titular portal mechanic. Dialogue has also been quoted to the moon and back for good reason, but we're not talking about the first Portal today, no. This is about games I didn't beat until 2021, so I'm gonna talk about Portal 2 instead. It has pretty much everything you could ask for from a sequel to Portal. The visuals are more interesting and appealing while still retaining a similar sense of atmosphere. The game's a lot longer but not too long. It improves old mechanics with lasers and adds plenty of new mechanics on top of that. The already challenging Portal puzzles have become even more brain-tingling. The story has more characters, backstory twists and turns, and the dialogue continues to be quotable to the moon and back, literally this time. Thanks in part to the one thing that Portal 1 was sorely missing, Cave Johnson, the man of legend.
In case you got covered in that repulsion gel, here's some advice the lab boys gave me. Do not get covered in the repulsion gel.
Not much more I can say here, this game became the phenomenon it is for good reason. Also, huge shoutouts to Sparky Monroe for gifting me this on Steam. Everyone else has been getting into the Metroid series as of late thanks to the release of Dread, so I figured, sure, why not? And let me tell you, I'm glad that Metroid Zero mission exists since it's the perfect entry point for the series. It's basically the first game, except without all the horrifically dated elements. It's easy to get into with a relatively low level of difficulty so newcomers can ease into Metroid's mechanics, and it's very good about guiding the player along while still giving them some agency. I was worried going into it that I'd have to continually resort to looking up a guide, but I never had to do so once in my first playthrough. Maybe you'd be concerned that the game is too easy and handholdy with all these conveniences in place, but there's still plenty to master if this game's prolific speedrun community is anything to go by. And hey, there is the option for hard mode or deliberately ignoring upgrades if you're looking for a challenge. It's also a good sampler of the series' conventions in terms of gameplay elements and atmosphere. But if all that isn't good enough for you, if you don't consider this an improvement on the original game, well, the original game's in there too, you weirdo. If you have any interest in Metroid and haven't played Zero Mission, get on it. Now, I should probably do something about all those other games. Okay, so we've talked about collectathons, kind of, and we've talked about remakes. But what about remakes of collectathons? The Spyro Reignited trilogy is where the Sixish part of the title comes in. Is this one game or three? In either case, how is Spyro this good? Seriously, if I knew I was going to love these games so much, I never would have made a video on Crash. These games are the best example I've played on how to do collectathon gameplay right. Spyro himself feels excellent to play as despite not having that massive of a moveset, and the stages accommodate his controls fantastically. You've got open areas to glide around in and charge in, and enemies that are actually pretty fun to take down with simple yet effective combat. The sequels offer more variety with mini-games and alternate playstyles, but I can have a great time with all three of these games because the gameplay is enjoyable at its core. It's just really fun to explore the stages since there are plenty of nooks and crannies to find, and there isn't any nonsense like getting kicked out of the stage if you die or whatever. In general, these games are so easy to vibe to, thanks in part to the ethereal aesthetic that I don't think my footage can do justice to. Seriously, let's see you do better on my specs. I'm surprised it runs as well as it does. This trilogy is a pleasant surprise all around, and an experience like that doesn't come every day. And there we go, 6-ish great games I beat in 2021, and there are even more games that I beat throughout the year. No wonder the adventure video took so long, right? Haha. Well, not exactly, let me explain. In the time period following my video on Mega Man and Bass and X6, I actually had quite a bit of free time since it was summer break, and I even took a semester off from college afterwards. The reason that it took so long really comes down to putting it off, but the reasons I kept putting it off are more nebulous. Obviously, scripting and editing took a while since it was the first hour-long project on my channel, but also with the adventure games, it's difficult to come up with a perspective that hasn't been taken before, which is what I wanted more than anything. With the Sonic Central that came out last May, I felt as though interest in the Sonic adventure games diminished somewhat, and in September, my Mega Man video suddenly became far more popular than any of my Sonic content. What that meant was that I wasn't sure if people would necessarily watch simply on the merit that I had made a Sonic adventure video. Possibly the biggest factor into the hiatus though is that at some point I had become unhappy with a lot of the videos I had made up to that point. I think they hold up fine for the most part in terms of voiceover and editing and stuff, but looking back I don't think I was really that passionate about the subject matter or making something that will stand out against the crowd. I actually don't intend for YouTube to ever become my full-time job or anything, so if I don't expect to pump out a ton of videos forever, I want each contribution that I make to have at least some meaning. What does this mean for the future? Well, if you're concerned that I'm soon gonna quit YouTube forever, don't worry. Forever is a long time and I couldn't in good faith make such a definitive statement. All the same, things are gonna be a bit different from now on. When I first started this channel, I originally made it my intention intention to create videos on a monthly basis, but I don't think I'm going to strive for that anymore. Hopefully there won't be any more 7-month-long hiatuses, but my intent now is to only make a new video whenever I believe I have an interesting idea for one, regardless of how long it's been since my last one. After all, if my massive viewer spike during my hiatus is indicative of anything, it doesn't actually matter how consistently I upload. This also means that I'm going to drop the Iggy Analysis moniker for videos going forward, since I want to do something different from typical analyses. With all that said, I actually do think I have an interesting idea for the next video, so look forward to that. But that's enough about me. What was your 2021 experience like? I'm interested in looking at your answers in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great 2022!